Early on in my healing journey, I recognized something that had always felt true about my life, and that is that I did not ever feel like I was here. Like, I always kind of felt like I was watching myself from outer space, is really the most simple way that I can put it. Even with many of the people that I coach, and including in the coaching program that we built, we talk about dissociation. And dissociation is a probably arguably one of the most important topics about healing and overcoming trauma that I probably have not gone into enough. And so that's why I wanted to go in this to you with you today. First and foremost, I think it's really important to recognize that there are multiple different types of dissociation. There's dissociative amnesia, dissociative identity disorder, and depersonalization disorder. And I'll kind of go into those a little bit more with you. But effectively, really, what it comes down to is understanding that being dissociated is well, it's a result of multiple different things, right? It can be because of trauma. It can be because of drug use, PTSD. It can also be from other mental health conditions, right? And dissociation is really about this idea of being detached from your body. You might feel a sense of not being in reality, or you have lost your connection to time or to the place that you're in. And most importantly, really to your identity. Dissociation kind of interrupts your experience in a few different ways. One, you have the interruption of your consciousness, you have the interruption of your identity, of your memory. And this is the one that probably impacted me the most was my self-awareness. Like, it's so funny to me when I think about some of the conversations that I've had with people over the years and they'd be like, "Dude, are you even paying attention to the things that you're doing?" And I'd be like, yes, but really wasn't, because one of the aspects that comes from trauma and our traumatic aspects or our traumatic experiences, excuse me, is that as a survival mechanism, we remove our emotional capacity to be present in our physical body because it helps us cope with the pain. And it doesn't always have to necessarily be physical pain. Like, you can have this same dissociative experience from witnessing something traumatic, from seeing or feeling or experiencing something traumatic. It doesn't always have to be that there was, hitting or smacking or punching or being beaten or locked in closets or things like that. I mean, yes, of course, those things add to it, but there's things that you have to think about as well as like this can be triggered in a lot of different ways. I mean, you're talking about from stress disorders, from affective disorders, from borderline personality disorders, depression, migraines, epilepsy, different phobias. Like, think about this. This is a really easy case scenario. You know, what do you think happens to your body if you have a phobia of, and I know this is a weird analogy, but if you have a phobia of water, right? I'm just saying that because I happen to have a bottle of water here. You will disconnect your brain from your body as a survival mechanism when you are around water. And it makes perfect sense. Now, being dissociated also will carry with it some symptoms. And I think these symptoms are really important to understand. And these are the ones that there are a couple of them hit me pretty hard. And I see this in my clients too. Like when we're going through coaching, when we're talking about where they are, big aspect of this journey for them is we start at getting present, just kind of taking a pause for a moment, getting our brain and our body and our experience as grounded and connected as we can. Now, that could be through journaling for a couple minutes or meditation or just sitting and breathing, but there are so many symptoms you have to be on the lookout for. Now, we're in a hyper alert state just in general in the world right now, and so I wanna bring attention to that. I think that's really important, but I also want to bring attention to the symptoms that are a part of this, and this could be things like having flashbacks. So one of the symptoms that I suffered through a lot was just to, in the middle of the day, have flashbacks. And these flashbacks would turn into panic attacks. And in these flashbacks, I would be back in these scenarios where my mother or my stepfather or my grandmother or kids at school or bullies or teachers or whatever it was that had impacted me, I would feel like I was there. And it took a long time and a lot of therapy and a lot of coaching to be able to manage those. Now they rarely, if ever, happen. But at first, these flashbacks occur because your brain is trying to make meaning of reality. For some of us, and this is how I operate, just stuff them down all the time. And then they were like, nope, we're going to show up. You need to pay attention to me because you need to work on this. And so I would say to anyone, and this is just my opinion, of course, but to anyone, if you're having any flashbacks right now, you might have disassociation happening in your life, and you may want to really, really consider stepping into therapy. I found that EMDR, eye movement desensitization and rapidization movement therapy, worked really well for me. I won't get into the details on it right now, but you can Google it, EMDR. So flashbacks are symptoms, feeling like you're losing touch with things that are happening in your life, or you're daydreaming in real time. You can black out, not black out, blank out during different periods of time in the day, right? You could be in a situation, and then have you ever had this happen? Somebody's like, "Hey, are you here? Are you paying attention?" But you're like in la la land, right? Memory loss is a part of it. You can have this blurry, distorted sense of reality. And most importantly, and this is the one that I see the most often, is that people are just disconnected and detached from their emotions. And that was another one that was really, really intense for me. There was, and I've shared this on the show before, and I've shared this in coaching before, and I've shared this with clients before. There was a period of time in my life where I literally thought I was a sociopath because I was so removed from emotional capacity. And through doing the work, through studying, through learning about the brain and the science and things like this, what I had discovered was actually I was dissociated, and emotions were scary to me because as a child, I wasn't allowed to have emotions without suffering, right? And that ties into this idea of trauma really being the theft of identity, the theft of emotions, the theft of all these other things. So looking at this and thinking about how, if you have some of these symptoms, how you kind of cope with this, I'll look at this from a couple of different perspectives. Hey, Unbroken Nation, we'll be right back to the show, but I wanted to let you know that you can grab a copy of my first book, Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma, for free. If you go to book.thinkunbroken.com, you can download the PDF ebook version of the book and get everything that I know about the baseline of healing trauma for free, downloaded to your email right now. Just go to book.thinkunbroken.com to download your copy of Think Unbroken, Understanding and Overcoming Childhood Trauma for a PDF for your phone. Again, that is book.thinkunbroken.com. One is the side that I don't really exist in because I'm not a therapist, but that's going to be therapy, right? There's cognitive behavioral therapy, and that focuses on people identifying change around negative thoughts and behaviors. There's EMDR, which we talked about. There's Gestalt therapy, which was incredibly effective for me because that therapy is really about creating rhyme and reason in real time. And of course, there's tons of medications. I won't get into that. Talk to your doctor, figure that out. What I think about in terms of coaching and in my own journey, what I advise my clients on, what I advise you on, if you're listening, if you're watching, paying attention to this, is first and foremost to make sure that you are getting sleep. And we hear about sleep all the time. Um, I have interviewed some incredible sleep specialists over the years, and they all point to the same thing, that getting sleep is the number one way to help your body heal and recover. And this is healthy sleep that is regimented, that is almost formulaic, and it's making sure that you're not interrupting that pattern with late night sugar, late night food, late night alcohol, and making sure that you have good sleep hygiene. And this could be like turning off the lights and putting on a red light, which if you can't see in my apartment, but I have a couple of red lights that I flip on, or they're on most of the time because I don't like, like these big bright lights that I'm under right now. It can be getting into a routine of, are you having chamomile and lavender tea, just slowing down, getting out of the throes of the day to day. Blue light glasses, people talk about those. But I think for me, and one thing I always advise to my clients the most is take your phone and get it away from you at night. there's probably nothing happening in your life after 8 o'clock that you're going to need your phone. And if it's an emergency, obviously, you figure out how to navigate that. But the scrolling, that's releasing dopamine. If you go and listen to an episode of Think Unbroken podcast that I did with Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation, you will find out exactly why you are addicted to your phone and how that actually is interrupting your sleep every night. There's a lot of relaxation techniques that you can step into. Personally, I have found that meditation, yoga, and journaling have become a almost daily practice in my life. Um, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Elephant in the room. Exercise. Like, you have to move your physical body. One of the best ways to release dopamine into your body, endorphins, to get healthy, to process, is movement. And especially movement where, if you're not on your phone, distracted, reading a book, listening to music, but instead just focused on your physical body as you're going through the movement, that is where you can start to reconnect your brain and your body. In my journey, this was this was yoga for me. And this yoga was really like therapy. And so I'd lay on this mat, only listening to what effectively was a guided meditation through the physical movements. And the more that I did that, the more that I started becoming aware of my physical body. And what was really interesting about that time is this is also the same time I was able to start stepping into emotions more. And I found myself like on this yoga mat, like in tears sometimes, because I finally felt like I was here and present. Then, of course, we talk about our diet. I mean, look, there's so much evidence, there's so much information that points to our diets really impacting anxiety, depression, stress, the processed foods, the sugars. And this is what's wild. There are over 200 different names in the American food system for processed sugar. 200. There's a high likelihood that each day we are consuming a copious amount of sugar, and that is negatively impacting us. That can lead to gut health issues like leaky gut. That can lead to having anxiety. I mean, there's so much about sugar. The processed oils, canola oils, vegetable oils, fried food, fast food. Food is medicine. If you haven't read the book, The Paleo Cure, I highly, highly recommend it. I read that book and it really kind of changed my life forever because I remember not really understanding the power of food. And when I read that book, it really changed my life because I finally was educated. And Dr. Chris Kesser wrote that book, and it's one of my favorite books. And then, of course, you got to look at your triggers, right? So if dissociation comes from the experience of witnessing or seeing something, then being able to identify and bring awareness to those triggering experiences is going to be in your best interest, because you have to recognize something. The next thing is coming. Like, whatever that next trigger is, whatever that next thing is, it's going to negatively impact your cognition. It's on its way. It might be happening right now. Just listening to this might be triggering you. You have to be able to be aware of those things and then execute against the tools in all the Think Unbroken curriculum, right? You have to be able to execute against these tools in order to be successful, right? Because if you can identify and manage those triggers, you have a much, much higher likelihood of having success when you are in dissociation. And so for me, one day I just sat down with my pen, right? And I just started writing down, like, what are the things that trigger me? What are the impacts of those things that trigger me? How do I feel when I'm triggered? And what can I do to get out of that? And so if you take an hour, 2 hours, and just sit down, you really start thinking about all the times that you feel dissociated, upset, have flashbacks, daydreams, whatever it is, you write those down. That's going to be a big win for you. And so all this, I want to wrap up and say this. Dissociation impacts a lot of people. You are not less than because you are impacted by this. You are not somehow like broken because you're impacted by it. I've been impacted by it. Thousands of the people I've coached have been impacted by it. People who listen to the podcast have been impacted by it, excuse me. And that's a part of the human experience. And so I want you to think, as you start to go into what's next in your life, to just bring a little bit more awareness, pay a little bit more attention. And when it gets difficult, because for me, it got very difficult to kind of put my brain and body back together. When it starts to get difficult, give yourself some grace, make sure you have support, execute the tools, and keep going. Till next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see you. Thank you so much for listening to Think Unbroken. Please share this episode with someone who could use it and help us move forward in our mission of ending generational trauma in our lifetime. And if you would, please take 5 seconds to pop on iTunes or Spotify, hit that 5-star, leave a review, and you can also reach out to us on social at Michael Unbroken or at Think Unbroken. And of course, you can check out our YouTube channel at Think Unbroken. Thank you for being a part of Unbroken Nation, my friends, and until next time, be unbroken.